Okay, it worked. We are live, and thank you for joining us for episode number 15 of Inside the Junior Reign. We're back. Last two Mondays were Christmas Day and New Year's Day, so hopefully everyone had a great break. Apologize for starting a little bit late today. We've had some connection issues in here with the Wi-Fi, and just trying to make sure that we're on and we're straight now so that we're not sideways again. But thank you very much for joining us, and great to be back after a couple of weeks off from the show. Today, Paul and I are going to be discussing some biggest misconceptions, tips around when's too much hockey, what kind of things do we do in the breaks, whether it's the holiday breaks or in the off season, when kids who want to have goals and things like that on their own of getting better, or they love hockey, love coming to the rink. What are some of those things that they should be doing to help them achieve those goals and help them continue on the track, and how can parents support them to do that? So we're going to dive into that in a second here. But while you're tuning in here, if you could give us a thumbs up or a like in the comments section, let us know you're watching. I'm going to be monitoring the questions here. We had a few questions come in on the live show last time. We were able to answer those right here live, which is really fun for us to do. And if we do miss your comment or question, we'll be sure to go back and answer it after the show's over. If you're watching us via replay, feel free to enter your comments and your questions there as well, because we'll go back to it before we get to next week's show and answer any questions that you might have there. And if you like what you hear, as always, we really appreciate you sharing the show on your page so that other people can find it as well. Okay, so Paul, just before we dive in, I want to make sure that we're showing right and that you don't have any comments yet. Because we had some connection issues. Looks like we're good. No, that's not the right one. Yeah, looks like we're good. We got Sarah, Jessica, and Lori Lakin already joining us, so thanks for joining us, guys. So Paul, your thoughts on breaks in hockey, whether that's like holiday time or off season. What's important to consider from a parent's or a player's perspective?
Yeah, well, great questions, and I think there's a lot of, like you said, misconceptions and not really understanding. I think the couple real key points are knowing where you are in that developmental path as a player, right? So what age are you?
Yeah.
I think the age appropriateness is so critical, especially when you come to the kind of the maybe the spring or the summer months, and when it's not the traditional hockey season per se. So, knowing your age and knowing the goals and knowing what's right for that player's body is really critical, right? And not just their physical, but also their mental part of their aspect of their body, right? And then I also think then understanding like the right type of training, the right type of hockey. If we're doing hockey, not, and it's March, April, May, June, July, August, what does that type of hockey look like? Right. What is that? We can talk deeper about that. So I think those are some key real points is, to recap, age appropriate, knowing where you are on that developmental pyramid or path, right? And then making sure you're doing the right things at the right times, right? And I think we talk about that a lot, and it's different for every age group. It's different, right? And I think there are some misunderstandings of what the right things are, and then also there's a lot of outside pressure from the culture perhaps, and there's also maybe your son or daughter wants to do this, and maybe that's not the best thing for them, or vice versa, or maybe you want them to do that and maybe they don't want to do it. So there's that extra external pressure. So I think trying to dive through all that and understanding of all that is important.
So it mirrors a lot of what we talk about a lot of times with developing the athletes, right? It comes back to there's a lot of reflection, not just maybe doing, like you said, what the prevailing culture is, or doing what everyone else does or has done. It's coming back, asking questions like, well, who is my kid, right? Boy, girl, age group, how long they've been playing, what their goals are, what do we want to achieve, having a long-term perspective of it. Right, so what not just the long-term goal, not just the goals of I want to make this team this season or wherever, but the long-term hockey goals and healthy in sport and things, and then being aware of the things that will help you towards achieving those goals, and some of the pitfalls to be aware of too, because I've seen a lot of times, unfortunately, parents who get their kids started in hockey, maybe they don't come from a hockey background, or maybe they don't have the experience with youth hockey or with youth sports even, and they're told different things either by coaches, by programmers, by other parents, by kids telling their kid whatever, and they maybe gets down the wrong path to something that goes against what they want to achieve. So and they may learn too late that it wasn't actually serving their best interests.
Yeah, I think if you follow similar principles to that you follow in the fall season per se, is that at younger ages, right? If you start to overtrain and overcompete, that's going to be issues for kids at the 12 and under age group, at 10, 8 and under. If you start to do, increase competition, increase training when they're not ready for it, I think it's you think you're helping, right? And that's when it's going to be, then down the road, that's when burnout happens, right? And it's the kid doesn't have the ownership of the sport, right? And so having the balance of that, and then also there's a lot of kids 9, 10 years old that love the game, and all they'll do is want to play. Great. Yeah. Right, but what type of hockey are they playing in those spring and summer months is important. If they're on the ice 6 days a week and they're traveling all around the globe and it's April 1st, then we have an issue. We have a problem because financially that's going to cost a lot of money. 2, it's going to cause burnout. There's going to be increased pressure when there doesn't need to be that type of pressure. The focus isn't going to be on development. The focus is going to be on competition, right? So there's all these different things you can get caught up in doing. But hey, if you have a 10-year-old and they want to play hockey and they want to play year-round, what does that look like? I think is understanding the different types of hockey. Is there roller hockey? Sure. Is there street hockey? Is there shooting pucks in my on my driveway? Sure, that's all good stuff. Is there certain spring programs that are good? And we can talk about later down about our spring program, why we've developed a certain way, right? But there's all these things that you have to take into account, and that's why we're here to discuss that stuff, and obviously leaning on people in the organization to give you good guidance is important.
So a few things to touch on here is, right, we first want to establish what do we want, right, for our kids. What do we want for our kids, and then what are the right things to do to help achieve those goals, and then and then the realities, right? The realities of our environment. What's your financial situation? What's your geographic situation? If you live an hour and a half from the closest rink, probably good to take some time off from driving to the rink after school 5 days a week, during the season, even no matter any age. There's some more local things. Do you have other sports that you play, other goals and academic goals? And then when how do your other goals play into it? When are tryouts for the next season, and how does that impact your goals for the season? How can you structure a plan just with some intentionality behind it, with some thought behind how do we best help these kids achieve their goals in a healthy, long-term way? And if you do that, if you take the time to really look into that, get the right questions answered, and reflect on those things, you can set your kids up for really some long-term success in the sport, not only in that sport, but in the relationship to the sport, and their health and their fitness and things like that as well. So I just want to, so Paul, why is it, so we recommend various break periods, right? Like our off-season program is still a break. Even when we have off-season activities going on, it's a significant break from in-season things. And when we take blackout weeks at the holidays and over the Christmas and New Year's, over President's Day week, and over Thanksgiving week, when we have those breaks in the schedule, why is it important for kids of all ages to take breaks?
Yeah, well, I think for me it's an easy answer, right? You want those kids, pulling at your pant leg to get to the rink, right, and begging to go to practice, right? I think if it's just you go 5 days a week, 12 months a year to the ice rink, I think it's going to be wearing on kids at any age, right? Until they're at a certain level, 16, 17, 18 years old maybe, and they're pursuing junior hockey and that kind of stuff. Even 12 months a year is too much, right? So I think it's that passion and that want to be there. And so I think taking healthy breaks is really important for the mental aspect of that, but also physically, right? Remember, these kids are learning how to skate, play the game, and grow up in front of our eyes. And hockey is one of the maybe the most difficult sport to play. We can have many arguments about that, but you have to have the motives to learning how to skate. A lot of other sports, you can run, you can walk, you can play, right? So I think that's understanding that the body needs time to recover. The brain, the mental aspect needs time to recover. I think the family needs time to recover too. There's a lot of time and commitment. People, mom, dad, whoever's running the rink, after work, traffic, all this stuff, they need time to recover, right? And obviously they want to use that time to spend together as family. That's critical. I think for all of us that are in the hockey business, you get so wrapped up in the day-to-day and go, and all we're doing is working, or all we're doing is practicing, or driving in California. Sometimes you just need a break to refresh, regroup. I think it's with anything, and I think it's positive for your health and your well-being is to take a step back, maybe even reflect, right? I think a lot of people reflect after a year's gone by and they kind of New Year's resolution, whatever, but even taking time during the season when there's a couple day break or weekend break, we don't have a game to reflect and say, we talked about that reverse gap before, right? Where my kid was, where he is, where he was when he started, and where he is today, and where he wants to get to, and those are the goals. That's where we are today, and the reverse of where they came from. I think those are really important. I think that gives you some longevity. Yeah. I think if you just go full throttle, 100 miles an hour every day, you're going to hit a wall. I've done it personally with hockey, and I've done it personally with my profession as a hockey director coach, where you get to a point where it's almost where it's too much, and you take steps back.
Yeah.
Instead of planning out your month or your year or your week and making sure you're doing the best thing for the total picture of your long-term development.
And there's that intentionality, right? Yeah. Looking at it as a plan and having those scheduled breaks throughout the year so you can stop and refresh. Like you said, maybe you're not driving as much for a couple of days, you're catching up with some homework, you're being a kid, you're playing with your friends, you're going outside, your family, having a family night, whatever that might be, over the holidays times, family dinner at home, those types of things, rather than maybe at the 10U level we schedule some travel tournament. Now everyone's got to leave 2 days before the holiday, 2 days to get back from this long tournament, and they're back right into the full season again with no refreshing time, no catching up time with the family and things like that. And that's what we've seen, just having that long-term focus. And the reason I see the conflict sometimes is there's a lot of stuff out there about like the 10,000 hour rule and things like that, right? But 10,000 hours is something to become an expert at it. And people get caught up with that short-term, you gotta, it's that scarcity of you gotta be doing more than the next person, but that doesn't mean you have to be doing it with no breaks, right? If you plan it over the long term, that 10,000 hours, you can get there over the long term. You don't have to get there year one. And if you get there in year one and then quit the sport because you're burnt out or you just can't do it anymore, it's just been too much of a strain on the family, financially, driving-wise, time-wise, then there's no point. The point is we want these kids playing hockey for life. We want them pursuing their goals when it matters the most at the highest levels. And you can get that work done in a way with still scheduling that time off within the season and then having that time off and out of the season as well.
And I think some of the argument from people is, the Tiger Woods model or the Venus Serena Williams model where it's just constant. Sure, those are one out of a million examples that there was success there, and was there really success for some of the situations that
depending on how you value success.
Right. There's sports success there, right? But those are one in like I said, a million things, right? We want to talk about long-term health of the kids and the families, right?
And for every one of those, there's hundreds of people who have maybe a ruined relationship with sports or a ruined relationship with their parents and things like that as well.
Yeah, and I just know from my personal experience with growing up with in Edmonton with a lot of great hockey players. There were some great hockey players at 13, 14 years old. Now have no relation to the game. And have a negative relationship because they just simply got burnt out because they were pushed. It was a lot of that outside pressure, and the kids that love the game from when they start to play at a younger age and they learn to love it and they're put in the right environment, they're always going to have that love affair with the game, and it always means something to them, right? And I think that's the key, is that we sometimes forget how important those younger years are, and we make critical mistakes in those years as coaches or adults or supervisors or directors, right? Where we put too much on kids right away and it becomes more our agenda than the kids' agenda, and that's when that's when the burnout is, and that's when kids quit, is because at the end of the day they didn't have the ownership and they didn't have decision-making power. And then when they become older and they have that decision-making power, they're not going to make the decision where they want to be part of the game because it wasn't relatable to them and it was forced upon them. I think that's really key. And so understanding just the little things throughout, the fall season, having certain breaks, right, to give people time off. And then once we finish the fall season, what do those spring and summer months look like is really critical.
So Paul, when you with these breaks, whether at any time, what are the most important things we want to have a break from, right? Because we talk about maybe a kid who loves every day is going to shoot pucks every day outside or stick handle in the garage or in the basement or whatever. That's fine. We're not saying no, you're not allowed to do that, right? Or they play street hockey with their buddies, or they may come to the rink for some things too. They may come public skate. They may come do some training. They may come do some other things. We do have events in the off season, but those events we do plan in the off seasons over breaks, like the holiday camp and things like that. They have specific purpose, and they are giving a break from some very important things that we absolutely need to take breaks from.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes to, for me, is about competition, right? Is the over competition in hockey, right? So, for example, myself, I played competitive tennis up until I was 19 years old, right? And when I had my breaks of hockey, I was competing in tennis, right? Completely different game, completely different mental aspects, right? And actually helped me in the long term. So we want to develop athletes, like we've always talked about. It's really important. So playing multi-sports is critical, right? But also you can keep up in your hockey skills throughout those spring and summer months. And that's why we built programs that you can do that still, where there's some structure, but there's not over structure and there's not over competition. There's not a ton of pressure. I think that's the problem. When we run into so much pressure, so much competition at a young age and at the wrong times is really detrimental for the development of kids.
Right. And so breaks from pressure, breaks from competition, and then even we talk about the physical break thing too, right? So just depending on the age group, right? Body contact, body checking. Not healthy to play 12 months a year of full checking in any sport. Football, hockey, if you're playing every single week, you're getting hit. Purposely hit. Not a healthy thing. NHL players wouldn't do that. National team players wouldn't do that. So some of these things that we want to purposely schedule breaks from, right, are those that the pressure over structure, over pressure, over competition, and overdoing the physical demands and things.
Yeah, and understanding the landscape, right? So we understand that tryouts are in June in California, right? So understanding that, we also know that kids can improve their skills. Right. If we finish the fall season and basically just do nothing until tryouts, they will not improve their skills, right? But knowing what types of things to do is really important, and making sure they're positive and they're healthy and they're good for the kids. So there is improvement and positive improvement, and they don't waste that time, right?
Some of the other things we got to consider too is when we do with our programs is that so we recommend and encourage kids to play other sports, especially in the off season, but even with the youth levels up until the BNM and midget levels, and even there, encourage them even throughout the season to play other sports. And in this day and age, a lot of schools don't have the sports as much or the physical education in their schools. Parents have different work and time commitments and things like that. So sometimes they're not able to play two sports and get their kids 5-6 days a week out to some structured, organized sporting event. So then we want kids, they can play outside with their friends and things like that, but they don't do that as much anymore either. So those opportunities aren't there. So even with our programs in the season and our programs in the spring and summer season, we have the off-ice programming, right? We're talking about adding floor ball to the 3-on-3 sessions this year, so it's like a street hockey type thing where they're running and making those changes of direction. Those multi-sport opportunities are important. We highly encourage people to do that. We try to make it a part of our program so that we're helping deliver what the kids need the most, and we're doing that during the season as well with the off-ice programming.
Yeah, and I saw a neat thing from a parent is they got one of those stepper kind of the watch things,
cool.
And they had it scheduled where the kid had to get 60 minutes of exercise for that day, right? So it was a goal for every day for the kid to have 60 minutes of exercise. So I thought that was a neat way as a parent to have some monitor, but also have some kind of a kid striving to reach a goal, right? So any little things or little tips like that, I think they're important to keep we want to be active, right? I think the science shows that to be a healthy human there's activity, especially at the younger ages, that these kids are sponges, right? And they're so open to learning that we provide the right environments for them to learn. As if we're talking about young kids and we're focusing on travel tournaments, in April, May, and June, and traveling all over the world and benching kids for losing a hockey game in April, then it's going to be a short career for them, right? And it's just not the best thing for the kids. If they're coming to the rink and they go to a skill session once a week or twice a week where they play some 3-on-3 and it's fun and they're having a lot of great time and they're improving that way, that's a healthy way to do it. Some of the examples that we did during the season I think is a great example of what we've done with the after Christmas, right? Or the holiday camp is, in years past, we would always do a tournament, right? So now it's Christmas, and at the older ages, there's certain events that they have to go to. They went to the Max Midget Tournament, which is a big event for the midget players, which is highly recommended, right? But at the younger ages, right, 2 days before, 2 days after Christmas, they're traveling or spending all this money. They're missing out on
seeing a kid at Christmas or Hanukkah or in the holiday time,
right?
Holiday
and then they come to this camp and they do a bunch of things with their buddies, 2-day thing after Christmas, and then they're done and they have some time off. So I think we've made some adjustments in having understanding that landscape and understanding what's best for the kids.
So just help summarize. So some of the things that when we are doing hockey type activities in break times, right? Some of the things we want to allow for, not just, and this is what we try to do in our program, but for all parents out there or programs out there, as far as the types of things we want to offer in break times, right? We mentioned fun. We want to come to the rink, have fun with friends, like see their buddies, that type of stuff. We want activity, right? So it's more skills focused. And we'll talk about some of the things we don't want in a minute here. We want it to be creative. We want there to be opportunities to be creative and try things. So, for example, we do off season 3-on-3 or 4-on-4, not full games, because we want them to get a lot of chances to go through your legs, do a spinorama, try new things, don't play a position, right? So that you can't really play a position in 3-on-3 or 4-on-4, at least you shouldn't be, not playing D or forward. You're playing, so you're being creative, you're having fun, you're seeing your buddies, you're having lots of activity, you're not, you're standing around and things like that. And those are the types of things, and a safe environment as well as physically. And we want to be doing multi-sport activities, athletic development activities. So, like I said, there's not a lot of hockey programs out there that'll tell you go play other sports. We want the kids to go play other sports as much as possible, and also get some of that with our programs here.
Yeah, and I think the end goal is to create hockey players and create kids that have a good relationship, and families that have a great relationship with the game, right? So if we're just focused on the short term, it may last a couple of years where you could go 100 miles an hour and do everything in a year, but it's not going to be long term, right? So I think that's important, is that the focus is on creating that long term development.
And the best way to get that 10,000 hours or whatever is to play hockey for life, right? Yeah. If you're going to play hockey from whenever you started at a young age all the way up, and you love hockey, you're going to get that, because the stuff stick handling at home and stuff, that all counts towards it too. The watching the games on TV and watch, all that stuff counts. So if you have a healthy relationship to hockey and you play it for your life and your career, then and you really love it and you want to get better, then you're going to get there. The problem is a lot of people burn out early and they never get there, or they continue playing, but they don't love it, so they're not doing that extra stuff at home, or they're not wanting to do the extra stuff as they get older, when it matters most. And you mentioned a couple people that kind of you grew up with playing that were maybe high-end players, and overpressure, maybe overcommitments and things like that. And that the sad thing is that you said that no relationship to the game anymore at all. And the sad thing there is, when you do that and you don't make it, like maybe if they made $10 million a year right now, maybe they'd be happy with the sport, or at least for what the sport's giving them. But when you don't make it or you quit, now hockey's a failure. Now you're a failure, and your relationship with the sport is just negative. And then if your parents pushed you and things, there's strain there. Versus if we have a healthy relationship with the sport, we just love it for life. If you make the NHL, you love the sport. And if you don't make the NHL, you love the sport. And your kids are going to play it, and you're going to help coach, and you're going to maybe get a career in it, or whatever, all these things, and it can do all these great things for your life at the highest levels and at the recreational levels.
Right, and we talked about that before, Ben, right, is that if you're so stuck on being a hockey player and that's what defines you, and actually the character of who you are should define you, right? And that's why, if you lose a hockey game or you fail at something, not letting it define you, and that's what you see when those kids aren't the top players now, right? And that because they're a failure because they've always been the top player, and that's how they were defined, right? Oh, I'm the best Pee Wee player, the best Bantam player, and that's how they define
versus
themselves.
A great teammate, a hard worker, or someone who loves the game, right? These types of things.
And that's why there's so many stories of kids that played on B teams and weren't the best players, or was the 600th draft choice in any sport and have made it, right? Because of their perseverance, that grit, the commitment, the dedication, the heart, the passion, all those things, and they kept at it, And there's so many great success stories of that.
Great. Okay, so now just for the last, we only have about 5 or 6 minutes left here, to the dark side of things. What are some of the things that people should watch out for and be aware of? I just, to share a story that from when I first started coaching in ice hockey, I came in late to the season. I was helping out coach a 8 and under team. I think it was 8 and under 10. I'm pretty sure it was 8 and under. There was a coach that was leading that team. I won't mention their name. And they had a playoff game. They got knocked out of the playoffs. And we came in the locker room after, and the kids were down. And so the speech after the game, this is before we took over the club. Before I took over the club, was, we didn't do as well as we wanted. We need to do better for next year. Go around one by one and kind of like, hey, Jamie, we got to work in the off season. Like, none of that silly baseball stuff, and put in right away pressure on these kids to get rid of everything else and commit completely to getting back as a team and working out in the off season towards as a team to have more success the following year. So tremendous amount of pressure, making them choose to hockey over everything else in their life, not do other things, which ultimately will hurt their development in hockey as an athlete as well, and burnout, and just a lot of negative things there. So we talk about pressure, avoiding the pressure. So not just pressure of competition, like being in games all the time, win or lose, but also pressure from people, things that don't feel right, things that don't maybe serve your child's or your goals. Pressure to do things because of other reasons is a big one.
Yeah, like that's the crazy thing, right? If you sports when it's done wrong, there's people are affected by this, right? Kids' lives are changed if youth sports is done the wrong way, right? And you can look back on how many where those kids now, right? And some persevere through it, and some are casualties, right? And there's statistics right now. They're not part of the game. They don't have a relationship with the game, or they hate whatever. They hate the game, or they hate that coach. There's so much of this anger and built up because of all the expectation. We're putting adult expectations on 8-year-olds, right? And it just doesn't. If you take a step back, it doesn't make any sense, right? There's just not education there, right? And whether the coach could be a great person, but not understand what's best for kids at that age. And that's why the first thing I said today was understanding age appropriate. It's always got to be age appropriate, no matter what, all the time. I think anything you do from school to athletics, it has to be age appropriate. I think that's the biggest thing. If you have that, right, and then you understand and you learn doing the right things for the kids, right? So you're doing the right things for the kids at the right ages, right? If you have those couple of things, right? The kid loves the game. Kid has a growth mindset. I think if you have those couple things all in line, it gives the kid the opportunity to succeed. And wherever they want to take it, right? And some kids will be able to play at the junior college level. Some kids will just love the game and become a coach one day and teach their kid how to skate. And those are all wins, right? So it's having the perspective of that.
And it can help them beyond being a hockey, in school and other sports in their career and those things too. So it can be a win. We can have success for all the kids, and not just the ones who've made the NHL, right? So just some things to be aware of when you're thinking about break time or your off-season program, whether you're with the Junior Reign or you're in New York right now. Some things to be aware of for the off-season: high amounts of gameplay instead of skills development or unstructured creative play, like a 3-on-3 or cross-ice hockey and things like that. So again, just to clarify here, with games, not only do we usually have larger rosters than there's less activity of skill development. There's less people on the ice. There's less pucks, right? There's more structure. There's more positional play, and there's more pressure to win those games. So we talked about a lot of times with the practice activity tracker, the amount of puck touches and skill development you're going to get in a game compared to a skill session or a 3-on-3 type thing is way less. So that's one on the skill development. If you're off season, if you do want to get better for tryouts and things like that, we want to emphasize skill development over gameplay. There's the results of games in the spring and summertime at the young levels are not going to get players or teams any further like exposure or credibility for scouts or things like that. It's all about getting better as players for the long term, which is that healthy balance and then improving your skills, right? So, and also increase the in the game there's increased amount of physical play, especially at the levels with checking and things like that, which can lead to more concussions and things like that if you're doing a lot of that in the off season. So we want to be aware of too many games, of structured real games in the off season versus creative or skill development play. We want to be aware of travel, over unnecessary amounts of travel. So really, right, in youth hockey, the only reason to travel should be when there's a reason for it. Maybe like for example, at the Pee Wee level Pee Wee AA level would be the youngest level that we have a travel event, and that's only because it's a league state-run Kaha weekend, for example. So that's part of their league, and it's within California. It's maybe up north. And you mentioned the 18 AAA level. Our 18 AAA team went to the MAX tournament in Alberta over Christmas time, which is a high elite event with a lot of scouts and things like that. And a lot of those players are players on our team, and those other teams will go on to play junior hockey. So there's a specific reason for it. To do it at like you said, in May for an 11-year-old team to go to Chicago, the reason should just be because if you do something like that, because your family, it's fun, and maybe you have family in Chicago and you want to go for a vacation. Cool. Like if people want to do that, totally fine. But pressure for a whole group of families to do that when financially it's a strain in these types of things, or there's pressure on kids to go and perform and take time off school and these types of things at young ages, not the right reasons.
Yeah, I think any time from March to August, if you can limit and this is my personal opinion, if you can limit the amount of full ice games, and you can eliminate, keep those to a handful, I'd say under 10 probably, and the amount of tournaments you play, and you play the odd tournament for fun, and that
your
kind
buddies
of thing,
and stuff,
for the experience, I think that's the key. But limit that as much as possible during those spring summer months. I think you'll see growth in the individual if you do the the half ice, cross ice, those kind of things, high puck touches, 3-on-3s, 4-on-4s. You'll create a hockey player out of that, right? And for the long term, I think that focus on the skill development and the hockey sense it's really should be continual through the whole year, but it's easy to get swayed, right? So I think having the refocusing on those kind of the spring summer months is important to understand that.
And then with the 3-on-3s and things like that too, we want to create skill players. We want to create goal scorers. You may if you play 20 tournament games in the off season, and you're a defenseman, you may score 1 goal or something like that the entire off season. You may come to play and you're stay-at-home defenseman or something. You come and play 3-on-3s all spring and summer. You may score 100 goals, right? Which is just different, And it's a nice break. You can always come back and be a stay-at-home defenseman when the season starts again. You know what I mean? And now you're gonna be better for it because you've been able to develop those skills a little bit.
And there's a simple example in a game, right? Is you can teach any kid to dump the puck.
I
hit the red line, I can dump it in. You can teach anyone to do that at any age, right? But can you teach a guy to read the play, beat a guy, try to take him on the blue line, beat with speed, right? Those are the things that we don't want to beat out of kids. That's why we don't want to over structure. We don't want to over competition kids at certain ages, right? And those are the skills down the road, right? Where they are going to need those to be able to play. Because as they get older, they progress to the highest levels. You can teach a certain system, right? A 2-1-2 forecheck or a 1-2-2, all these different systems. You can teach a kid how to dump the puck in. So there's many examples of that, right? Even with 8U and offsides and all that stuff. When they're ready, you can teach those things, and those are taught very easily. Let's not take all the creativity out of our kids at a young age.
Right. And one final just thought on things to be aware of. Anytime someone is, for the younger ages especially, if someone is telling you something for your kid that is serving their own interests or their own egos or their own agendas versus what's best for your kids, and there's putting pressure on you, like I said, maybe you have to go to this travel tournament in the off season, otherwise you're not going to have a chance to make this team next year, or you have to do things like that are not focused around helping you achieve your kids' goals. Major red flag, right? Of course, everyone has their programs and their offerings of activities and teams, but for parents, you want to be focused on your kids' goals and have those, and so people surround yourself with people that are willing here to support those goals. And sometimes people get stuck in feeling that pressure and not knowing what to do. But if you're in that environment, it's not going to get better until you make those decisions surround yourself with people that support your kids' goals and their best interests.
Yeah, no, I think those are great points. I think it's important if you don't know to ask.
to ask.
I think that's really important. I think for anything we do in life is if you don't understand or you need guidance, ask someone that you trust, right? And that's important, is getting those guidance and trust from people that have been here, people that understand what player development is, understand what age appropriate player development is. I think not everyone understands that, right? So making sure you find someone that understands that, right? And then has some experience in doing that and moving kids through the system, right? And developing healthy kids and players, right? And then also someone that's been there as, it helps as a player, right? And experienced some of the negatives that we talked about, right? And a lot of us, we've experienced as players and as coaches, some of the dark side of youth sports, right? And having that perspective on, hey, we've been there, we've made that mistake, or I saw that guy did that, and long term, he didn't get any further, or actually it backfired, right? So I think talking to and getting guidance and asking questions is really critical.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks, Paul, and thanks everyone for watching. As always, we really appreciate you letting us know in the comment section. Even if you're just watching the show, give us a thumbs up, say hey guys, and if you have questions or comments, please feel free as well. We'll get to those whether you're watching live or on the replay. If you could share the episode, we really appreciate it. We enjoy talking to you guys and enjoy sharing the message as far as we possibly can beyond the Junior Reign parents or coaches and families. So thanks very much. We're back next Monday for episode number 16 of Inside the Junior Reign. And stay tuned to our Facebook for those announcements, and we'll all talk to you guys then. Hold on here.